It all started out when the Houston Rockets added Charles Barkley and Scottie Pippen to come play with Hakeem Olajuwon. They tried to do that first. After that, the Los Angeles Lakers added Karl Malone and Gary Payton to join Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant. They tried that, I believe it was in '04, and that didn't work. Now, this is the team who everyone seems to blame LeBron James for the super team, creating the super team, aka the Big Three, right? They try to say super team when it's LeBron to try to make it more than what it really was. What it really was just a better version of the Big Three that got formed in 2007, 2008. This was the Miami Heat in 2010, 2011. When LeBron James took his town to South Beach, fulfilled his contract, we all know what happened after that. He went, him and Dwayne Wade was meeting previously and saying, hey, if the cars break right, why don't you come to Miami? But this is the original Big Three, a.k.a. super team. Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, and Kevin Garnett. Now, let me explain to you. This happened 2007, 2008. And I'm going to explain to everybody why people let the Boston Celtics off the hook and blame LeBron James for the super teams, when in sense it was the Boston Celtics. And I don't give a damn if it was their front office, if it was Danny Ainge. It was the Boston Celtics who formed the first Big Three, a.k.a. super team. In 2007, 2008, all right, that's when Ray Allen and Kevin Garnett joined the Boston Celtics. Would you like to hear their roster? Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen. They had Raja Rondo. They had Leon Poe, who was decent. They had Sam Cassell, even though he was in year 14. That's Sam Cassell. They had Eddie House. They had James Posey, who was a good two-way player. They had Kendrick Perkins, who was a top in the paint defender. They had Tony Allen, probably the best wing defender at the time, or at least top 2 or 3. They had Glenn Baby Davis, P.J. Brown. All right? And then we won't mention the rest of the guys. They had the other 2 guys, not much. Do you realize that the first year of the Big Three, they only gave up 90 points a game? A lot of people call that team the best defensive team in NBA history. That team only gave up 90 points a game. All right, and they scored 100. They scored 100 points a game. So that roster was already stacked. All right? Kendrick Perkins said he thinks it is the greatest defensive team ever. They won a championship in 2007, 2008. And that just happened. They went back to back. The next year, they lost the championship only because they got injuries in the playoffs. They had some key injuries in the playoffs. All right? But it is the failures of the Boston Celtics that gives LeBron James the blame for forming the super teams. Is this not a Big Three? You're going to tell me that's not the best? 3 Hall of Famers still in their prime. It may have been the last year of their prime, but they say your prime is what, 27 to 32, 33? 27 to 33. Some even say 34. But 33 we'll say is the end of your prime. 27 to 33. Ray Allen was 32, I believe. Garnett was 32, and Paul Pierce was 30. So they were still very much in their prime. And it showed when they played because they were the greatest. They turned around that franchise. The franchise, I believe the team was dead last the previous year. They brought those two guys in to join Paul Pierce, and they're in the finals all of a sudden. Remember, LeBron James, even though he joined Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade, he tried to get them to come to Cleveland. He tried to get Chris Bosh to come to Cleveland, but Chris Bosh would not come to Cleveland. So LeBron, after he had fulfilled his contract, and he saw there's no way we're beating that three-headed monster. So I got to go and get two other monsters. I'm one monster, but I'm taking on three monsters. And there's no way I'm beating three monsters. So what did he do? He went and said, okay, I got my other two dudes. Now it's 3 versus 3. Let's see who's the best. Right? And what happened? Yes, the big three was a little over the hill by that time, but they had just beaten LeBron the year before. I believe 2 out of the previous 3 years. They won 1 championship. Because they only won 1 championship, people blame LeBron because he went to 4 finals and won 2, as opposed to the Celtics going to 2 finals and only winning 1. You see, LeBron James is not the first one to form the super team. Blake Griffin said it right there. Blake Griffin said the Boston Celtics started the super team, not LeBron James. LeBron James was the first one just successful at it. And that's what's got everyone pissed off, because the Lakers tried it, it didn't work. The Houston Rockets tried it, didn't work. But LeBron did it, the Celtics tried it, they won 1 in 5 years. 1. LeBron won 2 in 4 years and went to 4 finals. That's why they're mad. If the Boston Celtics would have been more successful at forming a super team, people would be saying, oh, the Boston Celtics started this. And I don't want to hear about, oh, but they did it by a trade. Yeah, they did it by a trade. They formed the super team via trade. LeBron James fulfilled his contract and went and signed with another team. And you want to look at the rosters? Look at the rosters Boston had compared to the rosters that LeBron had with Miami. When Miami first formed that super team, only 3 guys was making over $10 million. LeBron, Wade, and Bosh was all making $14 million. They all decided to take $14 million. Everyone said, it's not going to work because who's going to play? Who are they going to get to fulfill the roster? They fulfilled the roster in with a bunch of players making $5 million or under. So you know the roster could not have been that good. Now let's look at the Boston Celtics. Look at their roster. Look at their roster. Look at the salary that they had on that team. Salary was way more. They had higher paid players than Miami had. Miami had those big 3 players. That was it. All this is because the Boston Celtics was not successful at forming the super team. But they were the forms. If you're not going to say the Houston Rockets started it or the Los Angeles Lakers, it was by far, it was without a doubt the Boston Celtics. And then they tried to do it again. Paul Pierce and Garnett. They tried to do it again to get to beat the Heat when they formed it in Brooklyn. And LeBron finished that big 3. He finished the big 3 in Oklahoma City. He finished the big 3 in Boston. And then he finished the big 3 in Brooklyn. That's the reason why people are mad. Then they tried to make it seem as though, oh, he formed another super team in Cleveland. Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving is a super team with LeBron James? If they were such a super team, what have they done since LeBron James is not in there? What have they done in their career without LeBron James? Then when LeBron James got there, and then once LeBron James left, how have they done? Stop with the BS. Stop with this narrative of always trying to discredit LeBron. The Boston Celtics were the first ones to form the super team. LeBron James was just the best at it.